Mabuhay, everyone. This is Reverend Reg, and today is August 27, 2021, and it's 8:30 in the evening here in Manila, Philippines. Today I'm so excited because so many of my viewers are into astrology and they also want to know more about the metaphysical interpretation of the Bible. And today, I have a special guest who can actually give us insights in the Bible and at the same time the astrological aspect of it. So it's such an amazing experience when you know the metaphysical aspect of it and at the same time the astrological background because it does help us. Wait a minute. My phone is playing as well. So awesome. So just to give you all a brief background of our guest this evening here in Manila, it's morning for her. Joanna has her PhD in philosophy, specializing in metaphysical counseling from the University of Metaphysics. She is also an ordained minister, practitioner, speaker, and author. And she's also the CEO and founder of Quantum Entanglement. Her passion is to teach, mentor, coach, and help others believe in themselves enough to chase their dreams and love their lives. So, without further ado, let me bring on board my guest, Joanna Crowder, and let's give her a warm round of applause.
Thank
Happiest birthday
you.
as well,
Thank you. Thank you
belated.
so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Very welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. So, how was your birthday? And we know in astrology, these are particulars that we all look into.
Yes, and I was very excited for this one because it's my 40th. It was my 40th birthday, so it was a big one.
Mhm.
And we rented a cabin in the mountains. We took our dog and the kids, and we just went to relax for 4 to 5 days and
Wow.
just unplug from the world and relax and spend some time together. So it was great.
Yeah, and it's fantastic because you look so young to be 40 years old. Anyway,
Thank you. Yeah.
welcome. So, by the way, how long have you been into astrology and metaphysics? Because there's a big help when you've been into it for quite some time, especially now we know that so much is changing around the world, and
Yes.
these tools can actually assist us in making better decisions and planning our time better.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where I've been picking up the puzzle pieces here and there, not knowing what the puzzle really was about. And it wasn't until so with astrology, it was the very basics of astrology, the 12 signs and that. And that was since I was little, I was always all about that. But it wasn't until about 2012 that I got into metaphysics. And that's when I started to put the two together. And I started to really, it wasn't until when I did my thesis, I was on meditation. And it was what opened my eyes to the fact that everything is connected. So when I later on getting my PhD and doing my dissertation, I did my dissertation on syncretism, which is basically tying everything together: the macrocosm, the microcosm. It's astrotheology. It is the combination of science. You have religion. You have the study of nature and everything in our anatomy. And so when I saw how everything was connected, I said, okay, this is it. This feels right. It's everything I've been looking for. It answers so many of my questions. At the same time, it was very confusing because we are all brought up to believe certain things. So it takes our own discerning and what resonates with us and what puzzle pieces we connect to finally start seeing the bigger piece, the bigger puzzle, I should say. So it wasn't until just maybe 4 years ago that everything started making sense with astrology, the Bible. I saw it, my perspective changed. Like your entire life unfolds differently. It's like the rebirth of a different perspective because you are now seeing the connection of it all, where we have been kind of conditioned to see it as separate. when it isn't. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing that you talked about how they're interconnected because so many things that are happening right now can be managed a lot easier if we just know that you need to tweak something in your consciousness, for example. What you perceive, for example, in perspective in the show, put things in perspective because your perspective shapes your reality. It's something that I encourage a lot of the viewers to look into because we don't really know that we're acting on programs
Right.
until somebody discusses these things with you, especially one thing that really opened me up was realizing the importance of asking myself, where did I pick up that way of thinking? And is it really working for me now? Because unless you ask those questions, you won't really take the initiative to make certain changes in your life in order for you to be happier and appreciate your life better.
Right. And
So,
to grow and evolve and see things differently. Yeah.
yeah, and I like that you mentioned earlier that it made you think a lot about the things that you have already been programmed a different way. And what are certain things that actually shifted in you in terms of perspective when you found out that things were interconnected?
So I grew up Catholic. I would go to church with my mother and would ask a lot of questions that I didn't get answers for. So I had a lot of lingering questions growing up, and I was very inquisitive, ask and you shall receive. So I kept on asking, and everything just made it got clear. It became, um, it's just the clarity of being able to understand how the Bible is even written, because at first I didn't understand it at all. It made no sense to me. I was like, this sounds crazy. I don't get it. When we try to just literalize it and try to read
Yeah,
it for what it is, and I would teach it to my daughter, or we would read it together, and she would start asking me questions, and I'm like, okay, I really need to get down to these questions that we all have. And my inquisitive mind just kept on digging and digging. So um it changed my perspective in the sense that I went from a place of feeling very confused, as in I had a lot of faith and I believed and I had that connection, but I didn't understand the Bible itself and what it was trying to say. And now it's like another language that I understand. Now it's written in layers that now I just see all the layers versus just reading the top.
amazing. Amazing. It's such a beautiful thing that you mentioned, especially talking about layers, because we know that there are certain things that a person may be living out in his or her life because that's the programming that she got, that's the layer that they're looking into, and it may not be the thing that's going to help them out as they evolve. And that's why people are stuck in situations that they can actually liberate themselves if they just had better information. So, for example, for me, one of the most difficult things that I had to deal with growing up was feeling like an outcast because you're openly gay, and then the Bible would say that
Mm-hmm.
being gay is actually a sin and you're a sinner for being gay. So until I learned metaphysics, that was the only time that I was able to see my spiritual value in the setting and what was my purpose to give to the world or to share with the world, whatever that was. Until I understood metaphysically what I was here for, it was very blurry for me and I felt resentful. So
Mm-hmm.
how about an idea about it? What's your perspective on it? Because I have a lot of LGBTQ viewers, and this is something that has been very challenging for us to reconcile spiritually, accepting ourselves and feeling one with God, and at the same time, understanding that in University of Metaphysics, we have a course which we call theocentric psychology, And we know that how you build your personal relationship with God is how your psychology is going to function every day, how you're going to have that conversations with God. Whether you feel separate from God or you feel one with God, it's such an important thing, especially during these fast changing times. So, for a gay person, Dr. Joanna, what would you advise us? How shall we perceive ourselves and what value we bring to the planet Earth?
Right. So that is huge, and something that really you have to think about the emotion, whether it's coming from a place of fear, whether it's coming from a place of love. Where did we get that information from, right? Was it from our parents? Was it from our society? Was it from a temple or church? Was it straight from the books, or was it the interpretations, right? So we have to start looking at, where did we get this idea that's what it is, right? Because there's so many different ways of looking at even what the word sin means. And sin really is just coming short of understanding. It's really being in the dark. And so if we are short of understanding our true meaning and our true nature, and the fact that God is within us, the kingdom of God is within you, Luke 17:21. If we understand that everything, the universe, is all within us, and that it's the microcosm of the macrocosm, a fractal. We are all unique, different, like um, snowflakes. We're different. We're different. Have different blueprints. And so, if you break it down further than this meat suit that we're in, that gets judged, that gets shamed, that gets put in a box and made to feel guilty for whatever reason, coming out of that box and liberating ourselves from that, and understanding the power we have within us, and that we are all just light. And this light, if you break it down further, is the logos. It is the astro logos. It is astrology. Breaking that down even further, we realize that in this oneness, there's a 12ness. This is called the sine wave. The sine wave is what represents the movement of the sun. It is the light. It's the way the frequency works. And so when you look at this 12ness, we all have aspects of the 12. We all have, the sun in Leo, the moon in Gemini, my rising is in Aquarius. We all have a part of the 12. And when we start looking at each other, at what we have that is the same, and what is similar, like I resonate with you because you're a fire sign, or I resonate with you because we have the same, air qualities mentally. When we start looking at the union versus the separation, we can start seeing how similar we truly are, and how we're all light beings in this human body. Instead of all the reprimanding and the fear-based mentality of what's going to happen, you're going to be judged, you're going to be, this bad person going to this bad place, etc. And all of that is just so conditioned, living in fear. And we know that there's many versions of the Bible. We know that it has been written many, many times over, and that it has been corrupted. So there are different things that need to be looked at. Like, where did it come from? Where did it stem from? What era? What was happening during this era where they reprimanded certain people? And it has continued along, first it was witch trials, and then, they're like, astrology's bad. And then, anything, homosexuality or whatever, that's bad. And putting this bad versus good, it's that duality that we have to transcend, so that we can see that we're all just this one. So I feel like we're one, but we have the illusion of separateness, so that we can experience that duality, so that we can overcome our own darkness and then go back to the light. Does that
Yes.
make sense?
Yeah, and it's amazing that you actually talked about it, because we know that the human brain and our consciousness is something that we can actually refine. If you
Mhm.
don't like the way your life is working out now, you can actually refine your consciousness. You can change your narrative, the way
Mhm.
you use your words to direct it to a kind of life experience that is that will give you emotional satisfaction and spiritual fulfillment, and not just be in a place where you feel mentally and emotionally stuck about a particular matter.
Right. And then
And
continuing that cycle and that pattern.
yeah, and it's amazing that you actually talked about astrology as astrologos, and at the same time breaking it down to from the microcosm, which is us, and then the macrocosm, which is the universe, which is something that hasn't been thoroughly discussed with me by other astrologer friends. So there's always something good to pick up from different experts in this field. And at the same time, you talked about the 12 waves. Please explain more about it, because I'm sure a lot of my viewers will be interested to
Yes, yes. So
know about it.
in syncretism, basically, when you tie and sync together all ideas, thoughts, and philosophies, um, you have yourself a sine wave, which is representing, if you look at it in astrology, would be representing the beginning of Aries, being at the beginning of the sine wave, starting the spring. At the top of the wave, you have the summer solstice. You come down at the middle of the wave, and you have the equinox. And then as you come down again, because it's the DNA, it continues, right? So as you continue down at the bottom, you have the winter solstice, and then it continues around in a loop. So it's basically 3D. In this wave, you have the 4 seasons. You have the cardinal signs. You have the fixed signs and the mutable signs. You have um, the 12 signs of the zodiac, which basically correspond with the 12 apostles in the Bible. They all correspond with the 12 um, cranial nerves inside of us when you were going to look at it in a microcosmic way. So they're all connected and simultaneously trying to tell you a story about your own enlightenment, your own ascension, your own elevation. So the way that astrology has opened up my eyes to what the Bible is saying, um, it's shifted completely my perception. So, for example, in the beginning, Genesis 1:14,
Mhm.
God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." And so you start thinking, okay, they're for signs. Great. So you know this it's already written in there that it's for signs. Then later on in Psalms 147, I believe it says that God named them. And so you start to put together, okay, there's something to this that I need to look more into. What else is it trying to tell me? It's Psalm 147:4. And then later on in Job, you start seeing the connections between how they influence us. You talked about, how do we sail through the influences of nature? We
Yeah.
do certain things in the spring, right? We plant at certain times so that we can harvest at a different time. Everything depends on the season and the clock of nature. So in Job, it starts talking about how we are influenced by the Pleiades, which is a cluster in the constellation, and it's written in the Bible. Then it talks about Orion. Can you loose the bands of Orion? Again, that's also in there. So that should just open anybody's curiosity to go, okay, these constellations are written in a book that's super old, and they're in there. And of course, everybody ancients looked at the stars for signs. The Magi saw the sign and found the birth of Jesus. So we have all of these put together that bring us the verse um, of the Mazzaroth. Do you know the Mazzaroth? Like, are you familiar with the
No.
Mazzaroth? And the Mazzaroth is the zodiac. So
Mhm.
this all together is kind of interwoven with again, layers, trying to tell us there's a little bit more to this in the macrocosm, and it relates to the microcosm. So it's super interesting because there's enough in there to to really get you to think and to really get you to go, okay, there's more to this. There's something way deeper that's trying to tell me something that I need to know about myself.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up the term nature,
Mm-hmm.
because the zodiac, it will tell us you are naturally inclined to do something, to act a certain way, to think a certain way, to feel a certain way. But in nurture, we know that we have the capacity to elevate our awareness and
Mm-hmm.
really check with ourselves, is this a particular behavior that I still want to continue? Because
Right.
it's no longer serving me in the moment. And we know that change is not easy, although astrology will tell us about our tendencies. But of course, sometimes when you get a consultation, especially for clients who visit you, and I'm sure some of them will ask you, here's a situation in my life and it's not working out for me. I want to go to a certain direction. What can I do about it? So, how can a person utilize astrology and their metaphysical understanding of the Bible to refine their lives and progress in such a way that is not very violent? Because a lot of people think that, you know what, if I want change, it has to be radical. It has to be, it has to be a 180-degree turn. But we know that because of evolution, it's not like you can easily weed out all the patterns in your habits that aren't serving you.
Yeah.
Because even if you want to change consciously, there's also that subconscious aspect of you that takes effort and time to actually shift. So, how can their understanding of astrology and their metaphysical interpretation help them make the necessary changes in life?
Good question. So, when doing your natal chart and getting a natal chart, right, you see your map, your blueprint of these tendencies, these characteristics, these things that do influence us. And by understanding that, we're able to understand ourselves and why we do the things that we do. It makes it a lot easier to go in a certain direction, whatever direction it is that because we do have free will of being able to choose what direction we want to go in. But it's also with the understanding that certain things will influence us, and that there are times where, you know, it is better to have a conversation, for example, than other times. And so let me break that down a little bit further. So we have in the year, actually, let me show you on here. We have this whole, I don't know if you can see it. You see the cycle?
It's
Um,
amazing.
It starts here at 6 a.m. So you have a clock where you have 6 a.m. and then you have 12 p.m. 12 p.m., 6 p.m., and then 12 midnight. So you have the entire cycle of time within astrology, right? And so if you look at it that way, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. is Aries, 8 to 10 is Taurus, 10 to 12 is Gemini. And if you start looking at the qualities of each, we realize, okay, Gemini is the communicators. That's a great time to talk. So why don't we have our meeting sometime between 10 and 12? And when you start looking at how each constellation influences the flow of energy during the 24-hour cycle, you can start doing things depending on, you know, what is naturally happening energetically. Because the thing is, we are all energy. This is all frequency. Everything that we're talking about, you know, people say, oh, how is it that it does influence us? Because it is made of light and we are light, and it's all frequency. So it does influence us. And by knowing and understanding astrology, as far as even just the elements, the earth, the water, the fire, and how that impacts us, it just helps with the flow of everything in life. Like I completely I do everything differently now, just understanding, like, if there's a full moon, oh, let me do this instead. If there's a new moon, okay, let me start something new here. It's just about understanding nature, because we are part of that nature. We're just a fractal of it. And so if we can understand how it flows, we can flow with it.
Exactly. And it's such a beautiful thing to understand that you can flow with life and not have to struggle so much. And I love that you talked about it because we know that you do certain things. Like you mentioned earlier, you plant crops a certain time of the year and you also harvest crops a certain time of the year. But that's metaphorical for me because we know that in terms of exerting ourselves in our careers or our businesses, whatever that may be, you want to be able to utilize your money, effort, time, and other resources wisely so that come harvest time, things are just coming to you easily and gracefully. So, for example, Dr. Joanna, right now it's August and I'm an Aquarius. What would be the best activities for me and the rest of the Aquarians towards the end of the year?
So the way that I look at it, because I don't really necessarily go, okay, for Aquarians it'll be like this, but basically on a bigger scale,
Mm-hmm.
collectively,
Mm-hmm.
we have the time to take action, the time to be playful, the time to really get into our childlike ways, the child within us that likes to play and that likes to take action. So everything related to summer, which is also very detrimental to Aquarius because it's the opposite, so it makes it a little bit harder. But that's the ebb and flow, the yin and the yang, the trying to achieve, the overcoming the cardinal with the higher self. So it's basically trying your best to go with the flow of what nature is telling us to do during the summertime before we go into the season of going within ourselves or preparing for the time of winter, the whole fall of getting ourselves in order. Just being able to understand what each season, and I say season, but really I mean each house, each sign, because each one, it has its own season the more you break it down. So understanding each of it, you'll be able to flow with it regardless of what sign you are.
And something that I would like to ask you, especially now in terms of what's happening globally, there's an ongoing war in some parts of the globe. And in terms of us understanding astrology and the metaphysical aspect of the Bible, what is it that people like us who are not directly affected by it? I'm sorry, I'm going off topic, but
You're
suddenly it
fine.
crossed my mind. What can we do to actually, soften the blows, especially for people who are having a very challenging time right now? Because I am very sure that for those areas, it's such a stressful situation and people are confused and hungry. And a lot of people tend to be more violent because of that very nature. So does it have anything to do with the time of the year as well? That's why the intensity of that issue is at its highest in terms of being chaotic and violent. And what is our job as people who are actually away from it? What can we do energetically to be a support system to those who are affected by it?
So we always can look at, where is Mars right now? Mars is the war, take action type. So we can always look at where the planets are and what's happening in the world. But on a bigger scale, we are entering the age of Aquarius, or in that transitional area. So there is that big shift between the Iron Age, the Dark Ages, and now coming to the light. And so you have that big separation that we're seeing right now with the dark and the light, those that are um, in the confusion, in the state of not understanding, versus the light workers, those that are trying to help, that are trying to shed some light. And because of this big shift, and the shift of Aquarius being um, the time when you have higher consciousness, where you have your consciousness seeping in, and that's basically the Christ consciousness, that when you look at in the Bible, when they asked, when will you come back? When will we eat with you? That's when he says, go to the city, you'll see a man with a pitcher of water, follow him into the house he enters in. And that right there is speaking about the man with the pitcher of water, Aquarius. So Aquarius is that time where the frequency, the angles of light are reflecting or hitting us in a way where we are receiving this higher consciousness, receiving revelations, getting insights, having awakenings, having this grand awakening happening everywhere. So people are going to be in the dark before they, it's like hitting the bottom, rock bottom before you come up. So when hitting the bottom, we know that it takes a deep desire within us to want to come out of it, to go to the light. And a lot of us try to help others to come out, but we have to realize to continue to follow our own light and continue to level up ourselves, to meditate, to go within, to really, really become that lighthouse, so that those that are in the dark, when they have the desire, click in to want to reach it, to reach the God within themselves, they'll be able to pick up on our light, be able to see the lighthouses that are shining bright, and they'll be able to go to them. So right now, with everything being so dark, meditation is key. It is the number one thing to go within, because we can do so much more on a metaphysical level, on that, other realm, the non-physical, than we can on the physical. So if we can all go into this non-physical realm, and we're all this one light in the other side. So if we just come together as one inwardly, we're going to change our reality outwardly. So it's individually, everyone can make a huge difference. Everyone is a lighthouse. So you have to go within, you have to get your light to shine, so that we're able to help the rest of the world.
And I love that you talked about the light, because we know that when you study metaphysics or astrology and you get into meditation mode, somehow it centers you, and the confidence that you did not feel that you had before, suddenly it rises up, or it illuminates your presence. And all of a sudden, people who don't find you to be the confident person that you are now as a transformed person, all of a sudden they're surprised that you're confident and you're like leading the pack. And for a lot of light workers, it's also a lot of pressure, because people begin to think of you as someone who's arrogant or know it all,
Right.
especially if you talk about issues like it's interconnected.
Oh yeah.
And
You're either the bad guy or the good guy. It's very black or white. I'm either hated on for speaking the truth, or I'm loved for speaking the truth. And that is a lot of pressure. But then that's where we have to really find our own compassion, our grace, our peace within, to know that other people's opinions have nothing to do with who we are. And we're going to trigger some people, because they're going to see that light within us and realize that they're dimming their own light, and they're going to be upset about it. So they're going to look at you and project their own frustration and be like, no, stop. And we have to be okay with that. Like, everyone's on their own journey, and eventually we're planting seeds. Eventually they're going to water those seeds, and they're going to flourish, and we're going to make a difference regardless. So I think that if we just keep doing our thing and not worry about everybody else around us, and just continue to level up and not worry about, they need to do better or they need to do better, the blaming game, and just, bring it back to ourselves and bring it back to the center, and go, what can I do today that's better than yesterday? What can I do to improve myself, And that within itself will just help everybody else.
yeah, and I love that you talked about it, because it's such a simple introspective question, but it's so important to ask yourself that and then take the action that you need.
Yeah. And disciplining yourself to do that consistently
Yes.
is very hard, but that's the narrow path. That's that consistency is key, because it's either life or death, and I want to be living while I'm here. I don't want to be here not living. So to go within and find that non-physical place where everything exist. It's like recharging ourselves and getting that. We recharge our phones more than we recharge ourselves. I
Yeah.
mean, so we have to start thinking about that, recharge ourselves just as much as we recharge our phones, and hopefully one day it'll stick, you know.
Yeah. And it's I've had a great time talking to you, and I'm just wondering, how are your kids and your husband feeling about this conversation? Are they really in tune with you discussing things like this, or are they in the process of shifting what they're used to and then just beginning to understand everything that you're saying now?
Well, I've been with my husband since 1997, very long time. And so he has been around me while I've been questioning everything. And so we've been on that same journey together. And everything I learn, I'm like, you have to learn this. Everything I read, I'm like, you have to read this. um, so we've been on the same kind of page, and he's completely on the same page with me, because I don't let days go by without me learning something new that I don't pass along to him. As far as my kids, they are 14 and almost 16. And ever since I started learning all of this, I started telling them about it. So I've been learning and teaching as I go, so that they also are on the same page. And everyone in this family is on the same page. So I'm excited about that. We all understand, it's like a different language. We all understand each other. And I play videos about astrology in the Bible and things like that, and they hear it. So I think subconsciously they got it all down. They know.
Amazing, amazing. But what about your relatives or your immediate family? I'm
um
sure there's a bit of adjustment to hear all these things from you.
yes, that's been a little bit difficult, but with time, um some of them get what they need to hear. Others takes a little longer. My mom, I started years and years and years ago, and she was a little resistant, but now she's very open and actually following through, and things are shifting. So I see that it does work eventually, and in some cases it doesn't at all, and that's okay. We're not on the same wavelength. I can't get people to see things they can't see. You can't do that. So I do what I can, and at this point it's like, I don't know what else to say. You can't get people to understand these things. Like, these, it has to come from within. And I think when you meditate, you can see those different layers. Because when you don't, it's written in a way where you're not going to be able to understand it or hear it or see it. It's not going to make as much sense until you start putting all the layers together. And the only way to see the layers is through meditation.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about it because one of the most difficult belief systems to break is when people are pressed for money, for example, the natural human tendency is to work harder
Right.
without going within and then asking God, is there a better way? Are you leading me to do something else? So, because of that thinking, that has made people work very hard, even if the universe is calling them to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not able to have that intuitive understanding about your life, then unconsciously, your hard work, because you want to bring in more material wealth, for example,
Mm-hmm.
it costs you your health. And then the ironic thing is you try to gain your health back, so you lose all the hard earned wealth that you actually put all your effort, money, and time into. But in truth, there was a creative way of putting things in perspective in your life so you won't have to work as hard and, you
And
know,
realizing that money is not everything, and that success is
yeah,
being at peace. And what is ironic about this whole thing is that I completely understand, because my husband is I'm all about love your life. I love what I do. I wake up, I could do this for free if I wanted to. Like, this is what I'm aligned with, what I'm passionate about. It excites me. My husband, on the other hand, He's working at a job that he doesn't like. He's doing it for the financial aspects, and it comes from a fear of lack. And here I am, the complete opposite. And I'm like, I preach to love your life, and you are not loving what you do. Um, so I completely get it. It comes from that place of fear and not aligning ourselves. But once you do the little baby steps of following your excitement each and every day, little by little, every day you follow your excitement, eventually you will align with what makes you, with what your purpose, with what you came here to do. And then that within itself, you find success, whether it's financial, whether it's mental, whether it's health. You have a mind, body, spirit balance that equals success, because that's really
Yes.
what we want is to be at peace and to have mind, body, spirit balance. And what's wrong with the world is that we have this focus on the physical and nothing else. And it's like, are you forgetting the mind that have thoughts? Are you forgetting the emotional body that have these stored emotions that many are suppressing? And are you forgetting the
Yes.
spirit? Because the spirit is the main thing here that's driving the material. It's, the ether goes from ether to air to water to earth to where we are. And that's first, but we're forgetting it. And so we're thinking that we're just this like speck of nothing when we're everything. And
Mm.
if we can understand that and see that how it's connected, we are then in charge of and can see how we're empowered and how we are capable of creating our own reality. We're able to follow what our intuition tells us to do, and then see how the universe, um, you take a step, it takes a step towards you, it meets you halfway, and
Mm,
things just kind of
mhm.
fall in your lap. So I've always lived my life like that, and I've gotten to where I am today, where I love my life, and really that's what I'm happy about. I can die tomorrow and be fine, because I am happy with the fact that each day I love my life, whether it's bad, ugly, good, indifferent. I love it because it's an experience, and I'm here for that.
Amazing. And when you're a young teacher, a young spiritual teacher, you get raised eyebrows from, certain people, be it your friends, family members, or even older teachers, and they would say, you're too young to be talking about things like this. So, how do you handle that?
I haven't really heard anyone say that exactly, but I have gotten that feeling from people where they might look at me a certain way or say
Mm.
certain things that I know what they really mean. Um, and that's when I have that saying of forgive them for they not know what they're doing, because they don't know, and you can't get mad at what they don't know. They don't understand. So I look at it more like a young child, like a young soul that hasn't evolved yet consciously to even comprehend the fact that there's old souls that can completely, break down their wisdom, and you wouldn't get a sentence of it. So there's so many levels to it that it doesn't affect me anymore. It used
Mm.
to before, but now that I see that everyone's just on their own path and we're here to do what we can do, um, it doesn't affect me anymore. So
Amazing. And something that I would like to draw from you in connection to that question, especially you mentioned about self discipline
mhm.
earlier. It takes a lot of discipline to be consistent with whatever it is that you feel your heart is calling you to do. And I notice a lot of younger people who understand metaphysics and see how they can maximize it and apply it in their own lives, coupled with their discipline, especially in applying it in certain tasks in a day where you really have to love what you do, because it's not exactly the kind of work that you would really feel that you love doing, but you have to do it. Because I also believe that discipline is part of your soul's maturity to
Mhm.
deal with life from its different facets. And there are a lot of younger people like you who are successful in their field and are thriving because of the discipline that they have. Because you can be an older person, but you don't have any sense of discipline. You're not looking at your life from different angles and taking action how you can improve it. So to me, it doesn't really matter what age you are. What matters really is your how much you've devoted yourself into something to thrive.
But I
Because
find, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
find that a lot of people just don't know why they're here. They don't know what to do. They don't have that purpose or that desire to do something. So it makes it hard for them to build discipline towards something that they deeply don't desire. And
Exactly.
I think that they're not finding that desire because they're not understanding what for. Like they're not asking themselves the question, why am I here yet? They're just playing along with the role they're given. I was given a name, I was given a religion, I was given a culture, I was given all these things, but who am I after you take all of that off? And we've been around this whole male energy for a while now, where it's work, 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 be logical, do, take action. And that feminine energy is, coming back around, where it's be relax, be still, let things come to you, be still, know that I am God. That stillness is what attracts what we desire. And we haven't been able um to see that until now with the younger generation that is bringing about that feminine energy, and that feminine energy that we all have inside, both male and female. The feminine energy is helping boost the love for life, the
Mm.
philosophy, the wisdom, the Sophia. um that's that female energy that's raising in everybody. And you just can see that a lot because of the way things are changing, as far as um, male energy and things being all about structure, versus now that fluidity and flowing with people working from home, people doing entrepreneur things of what they really love to do, versus the 9 to 5, the male energy. So a lot of that is shifting because of the Aquarian age, and because we're going into the light. And once it starts to become a norm, we'll start seeing that balance of of the two. Because right now we're just seeing total opposites, because it's just going everywhere until it balances back out.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that because it's so powerful to hear from someone like you. You've written a book, you have a business in metaphysics, and we know that not everyone is confident into understanding that they can actually grow into the metaphysical world, into their full blown potential as a consultant, like what you're doing now, for a lot of different reasons.
Right.
And I'm just happy that you came out with a book because for me, it takes a lot of self introspection where you stand in this information age, how you're going to put things together, and how it's going to be relevant in the reader's life.
Yes, yes.
Because
it,
I think, yeah, go ahead, please.
no, no, go ahead. That you think what?
Yeah. Because, when you talk about astrology and the Bible, especially the timing that you were showing us earlier, it's a different kind of personal growth tool. So it's mystical for other people, but we both know that it's actually calculated, which makes
Hmm.
it easier for us to understand and apply because it's calculated.
Yeah, it's a science. It's a science of nature, and there's nothing to fear about that. The book that I wrote was actually written in a journal format. It was the last 24 months. Well, as of spring, it was the last 24 months of my life, and it was really about how I was going to manifest moving. And I started writing it as a journal, but I wrote it for each sign. So I started in the sign of Aries. The next chapter was in the sign of Taurus. And so I went through the Mazzaroth twice. And each chapter, I would relate not only how it relates to us physically, because astrologically we have the Ram, the Aries, that is associated to the cerebrum. We have the cerebellum, which is the bull, which is Taurus. We have Gemini, the twins, which is the arms, the chest, which is Cancer. We have Leo, the heart. We have Virgo, the small intestines. Libra, the kidneys. We have Sagittarius. Libra. Scorpio. We have our generative area. Sagittarius is our hips, the hippo. We have Capricorn, our kneecaps. And then we have Aquarius, our calves or ankles. And we have Pisces, our 2 feet, the 2 fish that are in bondage. So we have the physical representation of astrology within us. And I just went totally off board. I don't know why. But by understanding that, we can understand how it affects us physically as well. I don't even know where I was going with that, but I felt like I guess I needed to share that. What was
It's
your question?
amazing.
What was your question though? Because I totally
Yeah,
went off.
because my question was, you know how both of us think it's very practical to talk about these things because it helps you organize your time and your year better because we know that all of that is calculated.
Calculated and scientific. Yes. So
Yeah,
how it's all connected and it's all
yeah.
scientific. So yeah, I love sharing how scientific it is because people think that science and spirituality are separate, but they are really just one. They're just one. It's a way of looking at it, and it's so it's so funny to see how everybody views it differently when you share certain things. Like, did you know that Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper painting had it
Mhm.
shows in the way that it's painted, it shows each and every one representing the sign of the zodiac or the
Oh,
season.
wow.
Yeah, so if
No,
you
I'm
look
not.
it up on Google, just look up the Last Supper and astrology, and you'll see exactly how each one was painted to represent that sign and to represent the seasons. And so you'll start seeing the different layers again of the story in the Bible and the story of our anatomy and then the story of our astrology, and how it's all pieced together to tell us one beautiful story of our own ascension process.
Wow. And are your readers going to find all that in your book? Because I'm sure they'll be interested to get a copy of it.
So yeah, each chapter not only talks about the astrology and the body, but then whatever was happening during that time. So a lot was happening because we had 2020 and all my thoughts in a journal format. So I opened myself up a lot to the readers to see it from my point of view, to help see it from a different perspective. And then I tied in Bible verses, astrology, a little bit of everything within each chapter and getting you to see the entire picture. So it's one of those where you can read a story and at the same time learn from it and
Wow.
then have a
And
reflection for yourself.
it feels like Dan Brown's book, The Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, anyway, Dr. Joanna, I had such a fantastic time with you. And I always ask my guests, we want to take action. And if there's one perspective you want me and the rest of the viewers to apply immediately, what would that be?
Try to, like, we're so conditioned to see the separation in things. I want people to see the union of things, the similarity of things, to meditate and go within and see how we are all connected. And the more we try to look for these connections, the more the universe will show us how these connections come about. And it's beautiful to see the entire puzzle piece once you've been collecting puzzles your entire life. When you're willing to be able to see what they all connect and show you, you're no longer sticking to, well, this is what this one piece is. And arguing about this one piece versus seeing that that's just one piece out of the entire puzzle. So to have a shift in perspective, we have to be open to the possibilities that what we've learned has been within a box. and then we have to come out of the box to see the bigger picture.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I learned a lot, and it's so amazing that your family is actually into these things that you're doing right now. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, and
Thank you.
Satnam.
Thank you, Satnam.
And if people want to find you, where can they find you?
My website, quantumellc.com. There's a group of us. We all represent a different chakra. And we have different services. I also have joannacrowder.com. But Quantum E LLC, you can find my book, Spring Manifestation. And yeah, and all the information you need is there.
Amazing. Thank you so much again. And I trust to have you again next time.
Thank
You know,
you.
we'll probably talk about something else, but still related to everything that you're doing.
Oh, of course, because everything is all related to everything.
Awesome. And
Thank you
happiest
so much.
first cycle again, because in our place here in the Philippines, we're into the 7 cycles. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
So happy first cycle
Thank
and
you so
enjoy
much.
the rest of the year.
Thank
Have
you.
fun.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Mabuhay, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in here in Perspective. I love how Dr. Joanna is able to share all these things generously with her family. I think it's so important to be in the same page, especially with spiritual stuff and philosophical stuff with their families, because it makes the relationship more harmonious. So I trust you pick up and apply whatever perspective you got from the show today. And mabuhay, everyone. Live and go beyond existing. Put things in perspective because your perspective shapes your reality. Have fun.